Well, how are you doing? Okay, the title of this video is going to be tongue-in-cheek. It's going to be the flat stationary Earth prediction. Now, the reason it's tongue-in-cheek is because our opposition are constantly making claims that involve the term statements like "my globe Earth predicts," "the globe predicts," "the globe prediction is," then asking questions like "what is your flat Earth prediction? What does the flat Earth predict?" Blah blah blah. It is abject buffoonery, right? The Earth, whether it would be a globe or flat plane, does not make predictions, right? People make predictions. The Earth, as far as we're aware, right, is not a sentient being that makes predictions about itself. And even if it was a sentient being, why would it need to make predictions about itself? Right? It doesn't need to do that. Okay? And it has no reason to do it, and we have no evidence that it could, even if it wanted. So no, people make predictions about the Earth and about the sky and other things. The Earth itself does not make predictions. So that's the tongue-in-cheek. That's why I have my title written in a tongue-in-cheek fashion. So I'm not claiming that my flat Earth makes a prediction. I'm not doing that, right? Now, moving on, right, not to spend too much time on that. The mount here. I had a lot of people in my previous video saying to me, it's an EQ mount, not a solar mount, blah, blah, blah. Now, I've heard the term solar mount thrown around as well, right? Many times, right? But it doesn't matter. I know what an EQ mount is. And if most of these ballers who weren't around in 2016, when I was speaking about EQ mounts, that's 9 years ago this year, right? I know what an EQ mount is. I don't need to be told about EQ mounts. I didn't call this an EQ mount. I called it a solar mount because the EQ mount is actually a telescope. Now, the camera is not a telescope. It might have some telescopic abilities, but it is technically not a telescope. It's a camera, right? No more than a telescope is a camera. They might have similarities, but they're not exactly the same thing. And it's following the sun, not the stars. Whereas the EQ mount is, traditionally, the EQ mount follows the stars, right? Not the sun, right? Because traditionally, with the original German EQ mount, it was designed for working in the nighttime with the stars, and it can work in the daytime too, but obviously, as far as I know, I could be wrong about this part, I could be wrong, but I don't remember. I don't remember if I read this or not, but the original one, you didn't point the lens towards the sun, because the sun was going to damage maybe the internals of the big telescope that was made, or the eyes of the person looking in, whichever. So the point being is that for the sun, we normally need something that will shield the sun's light from damaging shield things and eyes from damage that might come via the sun's light. Like, this is not a normal apparatus with a normal lens, because that Dave McKeegan has here, because the sun's light will damage it, right? That's why you don't normally point your camera directly at the sun. Blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Now, what is an EQ mount? Now, this is something that the ballers don't seem to understand, right? They think that an EQ mount is something that's designed to work on the surface of a globe and follow the celestial bodies, right, over a 24-hour period, right? Now, that is not correct. It's designed to work, right? It's called the EQ mount because it's equatorial mount. It's designed to work from a pre-assumption of being placed at the equatorial plane of a globe, right? This is the thing, at vernal equinox. And at vernal equinox, the equatorial plane of a globe extends out into what they call the celestial plane, which results in a much huger flat plane. And this is the next part. It's determined that that flat plane is 100% stationary while the celestial bodies move about. That is what happens in astronomy and in celestial navigation when they're doing their final corrections and some of the final corrections, and they're placing their elevation angles, right? This is part of the reason why, right? In the Nautical Almanac pre-assumes that sea level is a horizontal, and the mean sea level is the horizontal for the elevation angle, right? When you're doing your final correction, which is site reduction. It also, in site reduction, not only is mean sea level used as the adjacent to horizontal, but it's also pre-assumed that all of what is claimed to be celestial refraction is removed. So celestial refraction is removed, and the mean sea level is used as your adjacent, your horizontal, right? And the reason that they do that is because when they're placing those elevation angles, which will be the same ones they'll use in astronomy, at the equatorial plane, right, at vernal equinox, they can then, right, this is all a flat plane, remember, they haven't even mathematically added in a globe, right? So the claims about how they use tangents, they don't. Mean sea level can't be your horizontal if they're using a tangent. Stop being an idiot. They move that to the equatorial plane via their pre-assumptions. They might be pre-assuming a globe, but they're contradicting themselves by using mean sea level as the horizontal. When they move it to the equatorial plane, they then, right, what they're doing then is they're that equatorial plane at vernal equinox is when they move it there. So they're moving it there mathematically, not actually doing it. Actually, they're only measuring across a flat plane across Earth, using mean sea level as the horizontal, right? That is what they're using, 2 dimensions, right? Horizontal. They're not actually going to the center of some globe. What they're doing mathematically is when they place it at the equatorial plane, this could be why the globe is even used or even was invented, for all I know, is that they are placing it there and making that plane much bigger because they're placing it there at a pre-assumption of vernal equinox, extending out that celestial plane into this celestial plane, so that equatorial plane into the celestial plane, because often the adjacents of the elevation angles are going to be too great of a distance for the equatorial plane of a globe to deal with. They'll extend out past that. And then they make it all stationary and make the celestial bodies move. So that's the final position of all elevation angles to celestial bodies, whether it be via EQ mount telescopes or the sextant in celestial navigation, regardless of the sextant used, whether it be marine, bubble, or marine or bubble sextant, box sextant, or any of the other ones, because there's a few, I can't remember all of them, or if you're using an artificial horizon. Either way, it all ends up at the equatorial plane at vernal equinox, mathematically. Now, this is the thing. Back in 2016 into 2017, I was looking at the equatorial mount, the thing that people think I don't know about, and I was pointing out that through polar alignment, which is when they polar align the mount with Polaris, through that process, right, if you look at that process, it would mean that the mount could not move in any way, shape or form, even a millimeter, without losing polar alignment. Yet they're claiming that it's rotating around a circle, right, while looking at Polaris within their globe, right? This is what they're trying to claim. But no, it actually cannot rotate around, because it straight away is going to lose its alignment. It can't do that, right? If you actually look into it, it can't do it. And as I said, in astronomy, they place the whole thing on a massive stationary plane at vernal equinox, right? Because that's what an EQ mount does. It's pre-assumed to work with a flat, stationary plane. Now, and moving celestials above it. That's what the EQ mount does. It doesn't do other things. That's how it's designed. So, that leads us to this. Right. So, this is, right, the observer. This is, right, an EQ mount pointing towards their sun. Sorry. right? Now, within their paradigm, the heliocentric globe paradigm, the sun is stationary. I don't want to hear about, well, the galaxy is not stationary and this, and I don't care, right? Within this aspect, the sun is claimed to be stationary. I don't want to hear caveats about how, well, actually it's going around the great attractor and blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. Nobody cares or needs to hear that. Okay? Just letting you know before you come into the comments with stupid idiot comments like that, which you always do because you're idiots, right? And most of ye have no humility on the globe side. You know who I'm talking to. When I say ye, I'm talking about the globers. No, right? No humility, right? Because when it's time to admit you're wrong, time after time after time, you won't do it. Like I'm 10 years in this now, and the globers will not ever admit when they're wrong. I'd say I heard it twice in 10 years, if even that an admission, and it was over something small. I wasn't even over that big, so an actual admission of being wrong, so anyway, point being is we don't need those stupid comments. We know those things. We don't need them. Within this part of your paradigm, it's claimed the sun is stationary, right? So this, if I'm talking about your paradigm, obviously I'm talking to the ballers, not you flat earthers. So the mount here, let's just say this person's here. The mount is 45 degrees to the where the person is looking. Person's looking this direction, and it's focused on the sun, right? So let's just say that's 45. That's about 45 degrees, I think. Is it? No, actually, it's probably not there. So let's just say 3 hours later, right? While it's focused on the sun, 3 hours time, the person direct view over, let's say this is they're looking over at some landmark, right? The direct view ends up with the sun appearing to come from their east as they rotate west to east, right? You can do this either way. I'm just going to do it from left to right. It doesn't matter which way you do it, right? So I'm not making claims of whichever north or south. It doesn't matter. Just go whichever one it fits to. So the globe rotates from west around the east like this, right? And for this observer, from their position, it's claimed that they actually see, but they're seeing what they think is an actual motion of the sun that is claimed to actually only be apparent. So 3 hours later, the sun is low in the sky. 3 hours later, they get to this point and they have solar noon, right? On that day. Then 3 hours after that, the sun is back going to lower in the sky. Now, when I say low, it depends on the time of the year and your location, blah, blah, blah. Right? But the point I'm making is, at this time of day, the sun will be at its highest. Right? This time it'll be lower, and at this time it'll be lower. That's the claim, right? Now, before we go on to absolutely proving that a flat stationary plane, this is a thing, right? It's claimed that the EQ mount, right, that it rotates at 15 degrees east to west, while the globe rotates west to east at 15 degrees. Now, this is something that I had argued with. Now, when I say argued with, there wasn't any big argument. But there was a debate I had, right? More than one time, I think, but there was one specific time. And my point being at the time was this, right? And this is a point that I've heard, this is a point that is controversial, right? But I'm going to make it anyway. That the EQ mount can't move at 15 degrees, right? East to west, while the globe Earth is rotating west to east at 15 degrees, and it actually stay aligned with the sun if the sun is stationary. It can't do that. What the EQ mount would have to do within this situation is this. If the sun is stationary within that paradigm, which it is claimed to be, then the EQ mount, let's say this is 1 hour away, right? 1 hour from solar now. Then, sorry, it's moving around. Then the EQ mount would have to just hold constant on the sun. Because remember, your EQ mount can't move, right, at 15 degrees per hour east to west if the sun is not actually moving east to west at 15 degrees per hour. It would have to stay constant on the sun while the globe Earth's rotation, right, counteracted it as opposed to it counteracting the globe Earth's rotation. So the globe Earth would move this way at 15 degrees per hour, and the solar mount, or sorry, EQ mount, solar mount, whichever, the EQ mount would have to hold constant on the sun if the sun is constant. So if the sun is within that paradigm not moving east to west, not actually moving east to west, right, then the EQ mount can't be actually moving east to west. It can't be doing that, right? Within that paradigm, only the globe can move west to east to come to meet where that constant position is held, and then go past it and keep going. But that's a constant position is held. So the EQ mount would have to, under those circumstances, just hold its position in the sky and allow the tripod underneath it, or whichever is underneath it, whichever stand it has underneath it. Because if you look at the EQ mounts telescopes like these, they have even AI ones, and basically they it's not always a tripod, is my point. I'm just saying it's stand or whatever it's on, right? So the globe rotates west to east. This holds stationary constant. So all it does is stop itself from rotating, right? It stops, so the mount is powered, would have to be powered to stop any rotation of itself and allow its base to rotate. That's what it would have to do, because it can't go 15 degrees east to west, right? And the globe Earth go 15 degrees west to east, and they just cancel each other out and makes 15 degrees. No, it would have to hold constant if the sun is held constant. It can't go east to west at 15 degrees, actually move 15 degrees east to west if the sun is not actually moving 15 degrees east to west. So just a second there, I just want to get up Dave McKeegan's video, right? I'm just going to show here. Make sure our sound is off, right? So here's Dave McKeegan's video, right? Now you will see where it's following the sun, it's actually moving in one way, right? And then it will actually move in a few minutes the other way, right? So here it is actually moving, right? With the sun east to west, right? And there it is, this is the thing where it starts going the other way, right? So here it is, the full of it, actually moving east to west. And the proof of that is as follows. And now it's actually moving west to east, right? Now, it's going to go down again. This is not an attack personally on Dave McKeegan or anything like that. I have no personal issue with Dave McKeegan. I'm just pointing out that in his footage, this is what it shows. You see, I'm going to bring you back to what the EQ mount is. It's designed to work off a massive stationary plane at vernal equinox with moving celestial bodies. It's designed to move. It has gears that make it move east to west and west to east. The gears, it literally is designed, you can research them. Might have to make more videos, but you can look into them. They actually move. They don't just hold constant and allow the stand or tripod underneath to move. They actually move, because that's what they're designed to do. That's the point of the original German EQ mount, right? That's why it's always happening at vernal equinox. The reason it's vernal equinox, actually I should have said, is to pick vernal equinox because at vernal equinox, right, mathematically the globe's 23.4 degree tilt, right, is basically null and void. So it doesn't have, they don't have to, at vernal equinox, they don't have to address the 23.4 degree tilt. So that's why it's always happening at vernal equinox, right? So what good is that straight away should be an alarm bell, a big red flag. You mean they don't ever address this 23.4 degree tilt? No, they don't, because that 23.4 degrees is just 23.4 degrees north and south of the equator. One of them is called the Tropic of Cancer, that's the north, and one of them is called the Tropic of Capricorn, that's the south, right? So they need a situation where those two are on the same plane as the equator. So the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn have to be on the same horizontal two-dimensional plane as the equator. That's how they work this, right? This is what an EQ mount does, a German EQ mount. It is designed to actually move east to west. Actually move east to west, right? As was shown there in Dave's video. it actually moves east to west, right, and west to east, or left to right, right to left. Either way, it's designed to, with gears, to actually move, not to just hold constant. That's not what it does. It's not designed to hold constant. So if you're claiming as a bowler that your sun is holding a constant stationary position, then you can't claim, right, an EQ mount telescope has anything to do with that, because it actually moves east to west. If we start here and have this actually moving east to west, right, and the globe Earth actually rotating west to east, then that's not going to work out as a 15-degree rotation of the sun. Now, this is the thing in the past. People have said to me, no, it does actually work out. One cancels out the other, blah, blah, blah. Right then. So if this is actually going, right, if this is actually going, let's just start them, let's just bring them both in from here. Let's say, right, 1 hour from solar noon. This is actually moving east to west, right? And this is actually moving west to east. An hour later, this has actually gone there that far, west to east, and this has actually gone this far, east to west, right? But the sun has to be over this point here. The sun must be over this point. I just make that an X. That's the make that X bigger. The sun must be over this point. So if this is moving in opposition, if the orange dot is moving in opposition to the blue dot, then an hour later, right, the orange dot is out there and the blue dot is out there, but the point the orange dot should be at, if the Earth was moving and the sun was stationary, is here. Or if the EQ mount was actually working, right, was actually just holding constant, right, against the rotation of a globe. That's not what's happening, is it? We see they're designed to actually move, right? This is the problem. Now, on to the next thing. 1 second now. Right. So I need this, and this. Okay. So, same mountain, right? My last video was pointing out, with the footage from Dave McKeegan, right, that when the mount goes west-east, right, that the fact that the Earth, right, stays stationary as the mount actually moves west-east and the sun moves east to west. So the sun is moving east to west at 15 degrees per hour. The mount is moving west to east at 15 degrees per hour. Right? That's creating a 30-degree differential. Now, this is shown to happen with the shadows. I'm just going to play the... Right, 1 second now. I have it on slower, so it won't be working at full speed. But this will have it on a loop as well. So this is show. Right? So you can see with the shadow and the movement in the time lapse, they're working at, there's a 30-degree differential, and they're working at 15 degrees per hour opposite to each other. Right? Right? I'll leave it player. Right? 15 degrees per hour each, moving in opposite directions, which is a 30-degree differential between them. Right? This is what's happening. You can see that the shadow and the mount are working at the same exact rate. Right? But the Earth is completely stationary while this is happening. Right? This is the point of my last video. The Earth is completely stationary, so the footage proves that the Earth is stationary. Because this can't go at 15 degrees per hour, right, west to east, and the sun go east to west at 15 degrees per hour, and the Earth stays stationary. If the Earth was a globe, right? What has to happen is wherever this starts at, whether it be turned off or set to rotate west to east, it must appear constant and stationary. Because if it's going like within their paradigm, because like they don't even understand the full of their paradigm, if it's held constant on the sun while the sun moves east to west, that means it's not actually rotating east to west. This is what most of our opposition think, right? Because they don't understand the situation. They don't understand the original EQ mount or the purpose or vernal equinox or any of this. So if it's moving east to west, or if it's not actually moving east to west, if it's just holding constant while the globe rotates west to east, right? Then if you take, right, that means it's making up for the apparent motion of the sun, but it's not actually moving, because this is claimed here, the sun is claimed to not actually be moving. So if the sun is not actually moving, then this can't actually be moving, right? So if you change it to the globe Earth direction at the same rate, then it must appear stationary then also. See, what they're trying to do is they're trying to claim, in relation to my last video, is that when the mount goes, right, I leave it play, when the mount is going opposite direction, that because the globe is rotating at 15 degrees west to east, and this is rotating at 15 degrees west to east, that's creating a 30-degree differential. So it's moving at 30 degrees, not 15 degrees for the observer. No, what they're trying to do is beg the question. As you can see, the sun is actually this is the point, this is the debunk of it. It would have to stay stationary on the sun, right, to account for the rotation of a globe. And if it's stationary or rotating west to east at 15 degrees per hour, then it would have to appear stationary regardless. One way you can do this yourself. This is going to sound silly, but it works. Stand up, put your elbows to your side, right, make sure there's enough space around you. Point your hands straight forward with your palms straight out from your elbows, with your palms parallel and fingers straight out. Now keep them constant and go around slowly in 360 degrees. Doesn't matter which direction, right? Now do the same thing in the same direction, but this try and move your hands at 15 at the same rate as your body is moving, and see if your hands overcome the rate that your body is moving. They won't. Both times, even though you're trying to move your hands in that same direction at the same rate, both times they appear to you, the observer, as stationary. Right? This is the point. If it has to be stationary for a stationary sun, then it has to be stationary. It will have to appear stationary if it's moving the opposite way, which is the direction. It'll have to appear stationary, right? Whether it's turned off or moving west-east at 15 degrees. It can't move faster than the globe is claimed to rotate. Right? And I'm going to show this in a minute there, right? So, 1 second now, right? So, if, right, both, I'm going to start, I start here. I start at what would be, start up here. So, if this is solar noon, right, if suddenly the mount starts going west to east at 15 degrees and the globe, sorry, I just want to get it this way. Sorry, I'll do it this way. Sorry, this is just GeoGebra annoying me. Stop annoying me, GeoGebra. Right. Back again. Stop annoying me. It keeps doing that. Well, right. I just started here. Right. So, if, right, they're both like this in this position, right, that's not going to work, right. I do this, right, I'll fix that in a minute. So, if they're both like this, right, solar noon, right, sorry about that, just GeoGebra, right, I don't want to have to zoom in and then zoom out. If the globe Earth is rotating west to east, right, in this direction, right, and it's pointing at this mountain, right, so it's moving west to east and it's pointing at, and the observer is looking at this mountain, right? Sorry, I have to confuse myself with that stupid GeoGebra thing. So if the globe Earth, right, is moving west to east, right, this is solar noon, the mountain is directly underneath the sun. If it's moving west to east at 15 degrees per hour, 3 hours later, that mountain is going to be over there in relation to the sun, right? Right, within their paradigm. Now, the same would happen if you're on the bottom, right, of their globe or the south end or whatever, then the mountain would appear over here. But we'll just go in this direction, right? So this mountain here, right, 3 years later will be here. So if an observer is looking at this mountain and the sun directly above it, 3 years later, that mountain will be here for the observer because they'll be after rotating with it, and the sun will be over here, over a different spot on their globe, right? But if this solar mount is rotating, right, if the solar mount is rotating 15 degrees or just 15 degrees west to east, right, if it's moving west to east, right, then it has to, 3 hours later, be pointing at the same mountain. It can't, it can't actually move, right, and not be in, so if the observer, right, sees this, right, the globe Earth I stand on a globe Earth looking at this mountain and the sun above it, and 3 hours later the mountain is over here. When the observer looks at the mountain, it's over there, right? And the EQ mount has gone 15 degrees an hour west to east against the rotation of the sun, right? Then what you have then is the EQ mount is pointed at the mountain still, because if it's pointed at the mountain here, and it's going 15 degrees per hour west to east, then here it'll be pointed at the same mountain, and here it'll be pointed at the same mountain, because it's moving at the same rate as the thing that it's standing on, right? Right. Now, remember, they're not meant, in reality, they are moving. You can check that out. And that's the whole design of them. They're designed to actually move, right? Whereas what they need is a situation where the EQ mount doesn't move. What they're trying to claim is that it doesn't move, it just holds constant. But it doesn't just hold constant. It actually moves. And this is their problem, right? It actually moves east to west, which means the sun is moving east to west. Right, and when it moves west to east, this is what happens. When it moves west to east, right, what we see happening, right, the mount changes, right. So I'm just going to, right, here is, stop. So, right. If the mount is pointed towards the sun, right, and this is the mountain there, 3 hours later, an observer on the globe rotates, and what actually happens is the globe counteracts this solitary, right, stationary position of the mount. That's what it would have to do, because the sun is claimed to be stationary. So the mount can't actually be moving or moving against the rotation of a globe. The mount can only move east to west. It can only actually move east to west. It's either staying stationary or it's actually moving. And we've seen footage, it actually moves. If you look into what they are and how they're designed with gears to actually move, not just hold stationary. So within their paradigm, what they need to claim is that the globe Earth is counteracting the stationary, right, constancy of the EQ mount, right? Not that the EQ mount is going in the opposite, is actually rotating opposite direction to the globe Earth, because that's not going to follow the sun, as I showed earlier, right? But in this scenario, right, the EQ mount is holding stationary. Let's just say it's holding stationary, and the globe Earth rotates here, right? So it starts off here, there's the mountain, and the mountain rotates around on the side of the globe Earth to this point. Now, as the globe Earth continues to rotate and bring a mountain with it, right, if this mount decides to start actually moving west to east, right, then what's going to happen, right, is when that mountain gets to there, the EQ mount has to be pointing at it because it's moving at 15 degrees per hour, just like the globe Earth. But what we see in the footage is not that, right, is it? What we see in the footage is this. Here is the mountain, here is the sun, right? We see this happening while that happens. That's what we see in the footage. So this mountain here and this mountain here don't exist over there. That is the mountain that exists there, and it's stationary. So what they're showing us, right, cannot happen within their paradigm, and cannot happen within how they think EQ mount telescopes work, right? The sun can't move east to west and the mount move west to east, and there'll be a 30-degree differential between the mount's movement and the shadow while the mountain stays stationary. This is what they think is somehow they can't get it into their heads that this can't happen. The globe Earth can't stay completely stationary, right? It has to be moving, right? And if it's moving, then 3 hours later, when the mount gets to there, right, then it has to still be looking at the same mountain it was looking at 3 hours previous, right? If what they're claiming is true, then the sun that was there, right, the mountain that was underneath the sun has moved to there, because within their paradigm, remember, the mountain is moving, not the sun. But that's not what we observe. We observe a stationary mountain, right, while the sun actually rotates east to west and the mountain actually rotates west to east. Now, I'm kicking myself because I listened to people years ago, and I shouldn't have listened, when they started telling me, no, it seems weird, and this is people on the flat earth side. No, I know it seems weird, but the EQ mount just cancels out the rotation of the globe by moving against it 15 degrees. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. And I didn't agree with them. I just said, it doesn't make any sense. And at the time, I didn't have GeoGebra. And now I have GeoGebra. And I didn't know how to use CAD or any of them things at the time, I'll be honest with you. Right? So I was brilliant at using audio software, right? Audio manipulation software. I was brilliant at all that. Right? I had no hassle with all those, but I never used that in visual like this or anything to do with video editing. It was audio, right, was my thing. So, as I said, we see in the footage, right, the sun actually going 15 degrees per hour, while the mount actually goes 15 degrees per hour the opposite way. So the sun is moving east to west 15 degrees per hour, while the mount is moving west to east at 15 degrees per hour, and the mountain stays stationary. Now, I'm going to play this again. I'm going to finalize this whole thing. So as you can see, right, there's a 30-degree differential in movement between the mount and the movement of the mount of the camera and the shadow. That differential, right? That's because they're actually moving in opposition to each other. But the mountains are stationary. Nothing is happening, right? You cannot have the mountain staying stationary and the sun and mount moving, right, and claim, oh, it's a globe, right? That's just idiocy. It proves outright, not only do you not understand EQ mounts, but it proves outright that the Earth is stationary. Because as I said earlier, EQ mounts are designed to work from a massive stationary plane, right? Stationary plane, right? That's a massive stationary flat Earth, while the celestial bodies, right, while they rotate, right? And because when you're in the north, right, looking north, or right, the celestial bodies are going to come from one direction to the other, and south they're going to go from one direction, from the opposite way around here. The EQ mount, depending on where you are, is designed with gears to rotate 15 degrees per hour, either left to right, right to left. It's designed to be able to do both things, right? They actually move. They're designed to actually move. You can see them actually moving. What's moving in this, right? What's moving in this? The sun and the mount. Is the Earth moving? No. The mountains aren't moving. They are stationary, right? If the mountains were moving, then where this is pointed to, when it starts going the opposite way, whatever mountain is pointed over, let's see it in a second, right? Right, so let's just go back to make sure it's at the very start of the video here. So when it's pointed towards over, let's say this mountain here, right, then when it gets to here, that mountain must be over there, right? That's the way it would have to be, right? From an outside the globe Earth point of view. But for the observer, right, it would appear like the sun has moved around, but this has stayed stationary. That's how it would appear. It would appear like nothing is happening, right? That's how it would appear. Because the whole point, their claims concerning the EQ mounts, right, the people who don't understand them, on the both side, their claim is that, right, the sun is stationary, right? That means that the EQ mount must hold stationary and the globe rotate underneath it. So no matter whether it's holding stationary on an east to west movement or it's actually rotating west to east, it won't matter. It'll still end up appearing stationary because it can't move at a faster rate than the mountain that here. Let's say this mountain just right in front of it, whatever one it's looking, let's say one of these or in between this, it can't move at a rate around this way faster than they're moving around if they're actually moving around. But as I said, our opposition don't understand EQ mounts. They're constantly thinking that the sun is stationary and the mount holds on the sun and the globe rotates underneath it. No, the EQ mount is designed for vernal equinox at the equatorial plane. That's what it's called, an equatorial mount, because it's based on the equatorial plane. Basically, they're trying to mathematically add in a globe where it doesn't exist. They're trying to turn the celestial dome into the globe. That's what they're really trying to do. Like they always try, same in celestial navigation, when they try and plot things out on the globe, what they're doing is they're taking points in the sky of the celestial dome and then placing a globe in between the flat plane that they're actually using, the flat stationary plane, and placing a globe mathematically between that flat stationary plane and the celestial dome. Not that the sky is a dome, it's just that's just how it's depicted when you're trying to turn. It's the best way with the celestial bodies when you're trying to portray a perspective view of the celestial bodies, let's say side on or mathematically, right, which would be orthographically, then as a dome is the easiest way to show that, because it's 180 degrees, right, basically. So that's what it does, that's what it's about. So this is the thing, right? Right, Brian's stationary Earth modus tollens. If P, the Earth is stationary, then Q, an EQ mount telescope moving at 15 degrees per hour opposite to the path of the Sun, will create a 30-degree differential between its movement and shadows created by the Sun's light. Q, an EQ mount telescope, does create a 30-degree differential between its movement and the shadows created by the Sun's light. Therefore P, the Earth is stationary. Right? If P then Q, Q therefore P. Modus tollens, the Earth is stationary. You don't see any movement of the Earth here. There is only movement of the Sun and actual movement of the Sun and actual movement of the mount. The proof that the Sun is actually moving is that the Earth is not moving while west-east, while the mount is turning west-east at 15 degrees. That is the proof. You would have to see a movement there would have to be a differential. But what you're seeing here is a completely stationary plane. Now, people might say, but it could be a geocentric globe. No, you don't understand. There was never such a thing as a geocentric globe. But that's for a later date. I'm going to leave that for people who are arrogant in the future. Astronomers and people like that. I'll deal with them then. But the point is that what you're seeing here is a completely stationary plane. Right? Any differential, if it was a differential, right? Let's say this is moving at, I'm not even going to go into that because it's only adding in nonsense. The point I'm making here is two things are actually moving. The Sun and the mount. That's literally moving. And the Sun is literally moving. Right? So what would we expect to see, right, on a stationary plane? What would we expect to see on a stationary plane, right? If there was a mount moving 15 degrees per hour opposite to the 15 degrees per hour rotation of the Sun. We would expect to see this exact effect with the shadows here, right, that's created. So this is moving, the camera is moving at 15 degrees towards the shadow is moving at 15 degrees towards the camera. That's what we would expect to see, right, if we were to do a flat stationary Earth prediction. That's what now, as stupid as that is, I'm going to throw it in there just to be tongue-in-cheek. As a flat stationary Earth prediction, the prediction is that we would see the actual movement of a camera at 15 degrees per hour and the actual movement of the Sun at 15 degrees per hour in the opposite directions, which is what we absolutely actually see, proving outright that the Earth is stationary. I hate to say this, but Dave McKeegan, you have proved that the Earth is stationary. Inadvertently, not intentionally, but you've done it. Now it's time for you to be honest, right? Because if this is my question to the ballers, right? This is my question to them, right? My question to the ballers is this: what would we expect to see on a stationary Earth, right, with an actual moving Sun and a camera on a mount that's actually moving at 15 degrees opposite to the 15-degree rotation of the Sun? Because anybody who says anything different than this is being dishonest with themselves and others. Simple as. This is exactly what we would expect to see, right? Which is, we've all heard that a million times from the ballers. This is what we'd expect to see. Yeah, this is what we'd expect to see on a stationary plane. And just so you know why I'm using the term plane, right, is because all of the angles to this Sun here, right, will all be on a stationary plane. They'll all be across a flat plane. They'll all be horizontal. The distance between the mount and the GP of the sun or whatever, every measurement you'll make to this will be elevation angles, proving it's flat. So not only does this prove that the Earth is stationary, but it's flat and stationary. That's what it proves. Now, this is going to be even more unpopular with the bowlers than my last video, but it is what it is. I have to be honest about it. Right? When I'm wrong, I state it. This is not wrong. This is correct. As I said, bowlers, what would you expect to see if the Earth was stationary and the sun and the mount actually moved in opposite directions? That's what I'd expect to see. Right there. Okay, I think we're done. Thanks for watching.